If they running their mouth, then they looking for trouble. Ran right up in the knowledge, now they back in the huddle. See, they know we can fight, new content every week. Me and Dr. Clyde, keep on bringing the heat. Now they know that we driven, and they know we quitting. Yoshi and the winner, keep on bringing the energy. Unity. See, they know we ain't stopping, and they know they got problems, and they ran out of options. If they know got a problem, can't let it go unsolved. Bring back learner, Afrocentric history, we see tomorrow. Karma is karma, I say what I say, I hear underwater. Till I see I fall off, then I bring y'all up on note. I'm back up on my Clyde winners, 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 Clyde winners. Divine winters, Clyde winters, mind bender, Clyde winters. I'm Richard, ride with ya, master teacher, create masters, Clyde winters. Give respect to the elder, Clyde winters.
I've not told lies. I've not stolen food. I was not stolen. I've not fornicated with the fornicator. I've not caused anyone to weep. I have not dissembled. I have not transgressed. I have not discussed secrets. I have brought no lawsuits. I have not wronged the population. I have not struck kill. I have not transgressed the law. I have not been hunted. Except when I'm talking about on the tongue. I have not made extolling. I have not bragged. I have not cursed. I have not been violent. I have not confounded truth. I have not been impatient. I have not cursed against.
Dr. Winter's legacy is a testament to the power of knowledge and the unyielding spirit of exploration. His impact is felt worldwide, as he shares and enlightens at conferences, symposiums, and collaborative projects. His voice is a beacon in the academic world, challenging, inspiring, and always educating. His journey reminds us that the quest for knowledge is never-ending, and its impact is timeless. Dr. Winters teaches us to challenge the narratives and to learn with an open mind. As he always says, B1 is not a group, it's a lineage. Let his story inspire everybody to pursue knowledge relentlessly and to always seek the truth. Now let us welcome in the grandfather of research, the Trill OG himself, the Honorable Dr. Clyde Winters.
What up, though? What up, though? What up, though? Hey, family. Do you know what day it is? Do you know what day it is? Well, I'm going to tell you what day it is. Today is Thursday. And what do we do on Thursday? We talk about Black History Gems. Yes. Today is another day when we're going to talk about Black History Gems. Yes, we're going to talk about Black History Gems because that is, in a sense, the topic for today. Because, let me explain to you. History is important. And the reason that history is important because history situates you. History tells you who you are, tells you where you are and who you can be. And this is one of the reasons why Europeans, in a sense, try to hide a lot of our history. Yes, they try to hide a lot of our history, but that's over now. And it's over because the fact, in a sense, is that we're going to, in a sense, talk about our history. I'm going to bring to you another example of our history. And this example is going to deal with the fact, in a sense, that, who are the ancient Britons? Yes, yes, yes. We have to really talk about the ancient Britons because these were the earliest people to settle the Americas. And this is also, in a sense, where we came from. Yes, yes, yes. Many of us, in a sense, came and we worked with the Britons. We worked, in a sense, with these Europeans to develop this great land. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the ancient Britons. There's many stories about the history of Black people. Many of these stories are hidden. Yes, they're hidden. And the reason that they're hidden is because people don't want you to know about our great history. People don't want you to know about our discoveries. People don't want you to know about our influences. People don't want you to know all of the great things that we've done in terms of the history of this world. Yes, yes, yes. They don't want you to know about the greatness that we are and the great things that we've done. And this is one of the things, it scares people. And why does it scare people? It scares people in a sense to think that there's something out there that is important. There's something out there that's better than what the European can teach you. It's something out there in a sense that deals only with us as Black people. Let the researcher do the research. Yes, yes. Let the researcher do the research. You can go to my Patreon to see the slides after I do my presentation. You can find me on Twitter at Dr. Clyde Winters. Follow me on TikTok.com at Clyde Winters 3 to view my shorts. You can go to YouTube, to my YouTube channel to look at my videos. And of course, order my books. Yes, yes, order my books. Two of the most recent books that you will find most interesting are The World History of the Black Race, this should be in everybody's home, and The Cultural Continuity of Foundational Black Americans. The Cultural Continuity of Foundational Black Americans is, in a sense, the first book to really discuss our culture. Everybody's always asking, what is Black culture? Black people don't have culture in America. Black people don't have a language. Black people, in a sense, I have to give everything to Africa. No, it's not. We do have cultural traditions. And these cultural traditions reflect the history of our people. Get this book, The Cultural Continuity of Foundational Black Americans, and get my book, The World History of the Black Race. Get these books. Take a couple of minutes. Copy them down so you can order them. Here's some more books that can help you understand the history of Blacks in America. My book, The Nationality Law and Foundation of Black Americans, explains to you, in a sense, why we call ourselves FBA. Get our Black History Gym essays. In this book, we have essays dealing with many aspects of Black history. And of course, the history of Blacks in America from prehistory to 1877 is the only book, yes, the only book that gives you a true and authentic history of foundational Black Americans. Buy these books. There's an interesting video called The First Americans Were Black, Dr. Clyde Winters. Check this video out. It discusses, in a sense, the DNA data that I use to support the African origin of people in the Americas and, in a sense, our DNA. And this is an important thing that needs to be discussed. This doesn't necessarily mean that there were some people who didn't come to America, North America, that didn't come directly from Africa, because many of us didn't come from Africa. Yet, this, in a sense, will show you the genetic evidence that supports this view. Always, in a sense, remember, in a sense, that we're B1, and to be B1 is to be Black first. The B1 is to be brilliant first. Yes, yes, yes. We are Black and brilliant. We are B1. What is FBA? FBA is not a group. FBA is not an organization. FBA is a lineage. A lineage is lineal descent from an ancestor, ancestry or pedigree. As a result, we are descendants of the Black Europeans, Africans, and Aboriginal blacks who built these United States. Yes, yes, yes. We are FBA. Who are the ancient Britons? This is a question that needs to be answered. This question needs to be answered because, many people in a sense have always assumed that the Britons had to have been white. No, 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 no. The white-skinned people on this planet are very recent additions to the races of mankind. The Asians are a little bit later. But again, in the sense is that the ancient Britons were black people. Yes, black people like you, black people like me, black people like us. They left many inscriptions, and these inscriptions can give you information on some of the various things that these ancient blacks did in Britain. This is the sun cross swastika was raised to Beel or Bel, the god of sunfire by the Kasi or Kasi Bells. These are names of some of the earliest people who lived in ancient Britain. They were Hittites there, Phoenicians were there, there were Silures there, they were Prunt. These were in a sense the Barathai, the Britons. Yes, yes, yes. This is a place in a sense that has to be understood. Is that Britain was the home of these little black people. Britain was the home of a great civilization. Britain was the home of a civilization built by black people. Yes, black people built civilization in a sense, in Britain. Waddell wrote, the forms of the letters, whilst approximating in several aspects the Semi-Phoenician, Cadmean, or early Greek, present several cursive archaisms, not found in the latter straight line lithic Semitic Phoenician. But this is not the place to enter into the technical details of these differences, which will be apparent to experts from the photographs and transcriptions. Here, however, must be mentioned an outstanding feature of this Aryan Phoenician script in its use of short vowels and the frequent attachments of the vowels I, E, and O, and the semivowel R, to the stems of the consonants of so-called ligatures. This feature is found in the ancient Syrian and Palmyran forms of Phoenician. In the interpretation of these ligatured vowels, I derive much assistance from comparing them with those of the affiliated Indian Pali script of the 3rd and 4th centuries BC. The value of both for the horizontal bottom stroke was thus found along with those of other ligature signs. Yes, yes, yes. We have to understand that this was some of the writing of this particular scholar in terms of how he saw ancient Phoenician. Doggerland, in a sense, is a land in a sense that we call, in a sense, ancient Europe. Doggerland probably disappeared by 6,150 BC. This suggests that the Anu, yes, the Anu people, those ancient explorers, those ancient creators, those ancient civilizers of the world, yes, they were in Britain too. This suggests that the Anu may have migrated into Ireland before this date. Here is Doggerland. Let's take a look at that. Take a minute to kind of look at how Doggerland was. You can see that it included Ireland, Britain, and many of the other islands that we call the British Isles. Yes, this was a very interesting area. There are many racial types, according to Waddell, that lived in here. There was Aryan or Nordic. They had broad, medium, longish, light, sometimes reddish hair. The eyes were blue. The skin was fair. Then they had the Alpine or Celtic. Their skin was fair to brown, mainly black. And then you had the Iberian or Mediterranean. These, in a sense, were people who lived in Europe and they had brown to dark skin. Yes, yes, yes. It's very important to understand that there was not one racial type coming to Europe in the past. Today, in a sense, that because of imagination, because of the fact, in a sense, that many of the darker races were exterminated, today we find, in a sense, that the vast majority of people in Europe today are Caucasian, or what we would call, in the sense, a more light or fair complexion people. Thus, Dr. Bettle describes the Celtic area or race in Scotland back in the day. The head and face are long and rather narrow. The skull base rather narrow. The brow and occiput prominent. Hair mostly dark brown to brownish black or even coal black. Hector MacLean records the head is high, long, and often narrow. The face frequently long. The lips are usually, in a sense, full, often thick, and more or less projecting. Yes, it is. Isn't this the description of a black person? Broad lips, wide noses, you see? These are the Celtic people. Yes, the Celtic people, in a sense, would have been, in a sense, a race of black men and women like you, black men and women like me, black men and women like us. Waddell wrote, Strabo habitually used the term Celtica, or land of the Celts, for Gaul, which corresponds generally to modern France, including Switzerland, and defines it thus. Celtica is bounded on the southwest by the mountains of the Pyrenees, which extend to either sea, both the Mediterranean and the ocean on the east by the Rhine on the north, and by the ocean from the northwestern extremity of the Pyrenees to the mouth of the Rhine, on the south by the Sea of Marseilles and by the Alps, from Liguria, Genoa, to the sources of the Rhine. He excludes Iberia or Spain, Portugal from Celtica, noting that the Pyrenees chain divides Celtica from Iberia. But he adds, Iphorus extends the sides of Celtica too far, including within it what we now designate as Iberia as far as Cadiz or Cadiz. He includes Liguria, Genoa, and the Piedmont on the Italian side of the Alps, whose people, he says, were named by the Greeks Celto-Ligures or Celto-Ligurians. It is also noteworthy that he calls the inhabitants of Celtica or Gaul not only to Celtai, but also them and their land repeatedly dialectic, a variant of Galadia or Celt. He also talks about Gege, the land of the Celts. So you can see, if you look at this here, we can see in a sense Iberian Peninsula, and you can see this land where many of these Celts formerly lived before they came over to Britain. The old inhabitants of Britain are identified as Celts. This is based on linguistic evidence that Waddell noted. The confusion began with the observation of the French philologist that the language of the Celts in Brittany or Mid-Gaul or Celtic speech, as it was naturally called by them, was essentially similar in structure to that of the Britons or the Cymry speech of the Welsh and the Briton of the Brittany in Gaul. The Brethiolic language was then presumed to be a branch of the Celtic or Gaul, and the term Celtic applied to it, and then extended to a racial sense to the Welsh, people who spoke it. Similarly, the Gaelic or Gaelic speech of the Irish and the Scottish Highlanders was also found to have affinity with the Gaelic and Welsh Celtic, and all the people speaking these languages were also dubbed Celts or Celts. Here you can now see this diagram. Take a little look at that. You can see it, hopefully, that outlines, in a sense, the current view of relationship to modern Celtic languages. The history of the British-Irish language is a very important way to look at things. This book was written by Starsky, and he says that around 400, he begins around 400 AD, and you can see the spread of the language from 400 AD. Then the next picture, we see 1000 or 1000 AD. Then we can see 1600 AD. And we can see, in a sense, this slow decline in many of the languages that would have been spoken by the Ainu and other people there. And we see a rise in terms of the British and Irish languages across the British Isles. The Celts were described as dark-skinned. Waddell wrote, in the year M. Paul Broca, who had begun 4 years earlier a systemic measurement of the head forms of the people of France, published his famous monograph on the head forms of the Celts of Brittany, the descendants of the original Celts of Caesar and the classic writers. He found that so far from these Celts being of Aryan physical type, namely tall, fair, and long-headed, they were on the contrary a short, darkish complexion and round-headed race. The next year, 865, appeared the celebrated collection of measurements of the ethnic types in the British Isles by Davies and Thunum and their Crania Britannica of 1865, on which they had been engaged in since 1860, and Dr. Bedloe's papers. This disclosed conclusively that the Celtic-speaking people of the British Isles, and more particularly Welsh, were also of a short and dark complexion. but with long heads and medium long heads, and thus were remarkably different racial type to the Celts of Gaul, whilst their skull form and complexion excluded the greater portion of them from the Aryan racial type and affiliated them to the Iberians. Again, in a sense, we can see the SULA in the broker wrote it through the Ethnologie de France, the Memoires Société d'Anthropologie, in 1860. But again, as you can see, the Celts, in a sense, were recognized very early in their history as, in a sense, a Black people like you, a Black people like me, a Black people like us. Here's some of the racial types of Europe. The Aryan and Nordic, the Alpine Celtic, the Iberian and Mediterranean. You can take a few minutes if you want to look at this and read over it. They used to call this land Hibernia. The first sons of Ireland came from Iberia, Waddell wrote. Iberians, Ireland and Hebrides, and the Western Isles are probably survivors of the Iberia title for the primitive atoll, which first people British Isles in the Stone Age. And description, and the chief of the later Gaudides. Waddell tells us that anthropologists, from their exact measurements of the people of Britain, tell us that the darkest population forms the nucleus of each of the Celtic language areas, which now remain. And this dark Celtic speaking element is especially found in the Grampian Hills in Scotland and the wild and mountainous Wales and Cornwall and in the hills of Connemara and the Kerry and the Western Ireland. So again, in a sense, look at these maps, you can see these lands where the Celtic or the Black people lived, they were dark. Here's one of the ports where they came to Cornwall, and here, in a sense, they came to get tin in Phoenician times. The location of the mines associated with the megaliths of the stone circles in England and Wales, where the earliest Phoenicians and other people came and got tin and other minerals. This is the location of the mines. They were associated with megaliths. They have found artifacts in Britain that are similar to artifacts found in Egypt. Waddell said that, and I quote, "The blue glazed beads of an amber necklace exhumed from an early bronze tomb in Stonehenge, and others found in the circle itself and at other prehistoric sites are of the identical kind, which was common in ancient Egypt." So we can see, in a sense, that Black people in Egypt were not just isolated only in Africa. You can see that they had the many ancient Egyptians and other Black people from Africa and the Mediterranean had found and settled many parts of modern Britain. The British Isles. The British Isles was never really isolated from the rest of the world. The original Druids were worshipped at Stonehenge in ancient Britain. This would have been how the Druids would have looked. They would have been Black people, and they would have been, in a sense, around Stonehenge, where they would have celebrated their arts. They would have celebrated, in a sense, their rituals. And this would have been a place where they would have, really kept some of their traditions. In relation to the Silures, MacRitchie wrote, and I quote, "But at any rate, the people known as Iberians were spread over the British Isles, whether indigenous or immigrants. And some of their tribes are known as Dam, Nunil, and Silures. This seems to be generally admitted. Physically, they were swarthy of color, had curly hair, and were bearded like goats. They, on some clans of them, worshipped the gods, and both men and women possessed the knowledge of the future. So then the Druids and Druidesses, who had colleges in an island near the coast of Brittany, who professed knowledge of the future, who the men at least were figured as bearded like goats, and who worshiped the gods, were dark-skinned, curly-haired Iberians of the tribe of Silures, or Damnonils. This seems a fair inference. Again, you can find this in MacRitchie's book, page 44. Again, this, in a sense, would have been the Black people. These would have been the early Britons who would have been worshiping in Stonehenge and other sites, because We believe that places like Stonehenge, or where they would put up these various monoliths, where they would put up these stones, were really, in a sense, spiritual places, places in a sense where blacks would congregate and they would, spread the religion and worship their gods. The Celtic kings, in a sense, were many. And the Celtic kings would have been black people like you, black people like me, black people like us. Don't get it twisted. These were not Caucasian people. In relation to the Silures, McRitchie wrote, but at any rate, the people known as Iberians were spread all over the British Isles, whether indigenous or immigrant. The Iberians are styled swarthy and curly-haired. The word swarthy is rather elastic, and although literally swartz, black, it is taken, I fancy, to mean something not quite so dark as the color of a Negro, and its usual exception. Perhaps the distinction does not exist. In other words, when they called them dark, they meant that they were like Negroes, like you, like me, like us. But at any rate, if the small dark Highlander and the black Celts on the west of the Shannon be assumed to be the descendants of Iberians, it may fairly be argued that with so much intermixture with fair races during the last 2,000 years, the stock must now be rather lighter skinned than then. And its representation in the first century must have been actually as black as Negroes. As a matter of fact, Pliny characterized their complexion as Ethiopian, that is, as black as an Ethiopian. And it may be that the curliness of their hair was of the same nature as the Negro's hair, because we have curly hair. Oh, yes. McRitchie defined a Moor. Now, when Claudian wrote, and for a long time after Morris, signified a great deal more than a native of Mauritania. Or it may be more correct to say that Mauritania implied as much, though in a different quarter as Scythia did. Any Latin dictionary, any old one at least, will tell you that a Maurus is a Moor, a blackamoor, or a tawny Moor. And Shakespeare used the word Moor as a synonym for Negro. As that last word bears nowadays a somewhat restricted meaning, it may be better to take the old-fashioned blackamoor as the nearest English rendering of Morus, signifying thereby any black or brown-skinned man. McRitchie was the first researcher to note that your surname often goes back to a black ancestor. He wrote that, but if the Negro ancestor of such a 9/10 white man had lived amidst a white population whose ideas with regard to nomenclature were as primitive as those of our ancestors 1,000 years ago, his offspring would have eventually become known by such names as black or Negro, used as a surname. Precisely the same thing has actually happened here. We know as a historical fact that the nigger Van Doop had lived and reigned over certain black divisions of our island, and probably over white divisions also, and that a race known as the Sons of the Black succeeded him in history. Yes. They, it's very interesting. Now, people try to act like they didn't mean black, or they didn't mean Schwartz or dark skin back in the day, and now they try to change the meaning today. That's why a lot of times when you're really trying to deal with history, you really want to look at dictionaries that go back to that time so that you can see the actual meaning of the words, because today, the white supremacists want to do everything they can to give themselves a history and to put themselves in places where they weren't. McRitchie added that the fact is that most of our surnames are so old that while they argue with considerable force that this or that man is descended from such and such a race, they give us no help in finding out the predominating blood. Everyone, unless the child of cousins, German, is possessed of 8 great-grandparents, but the trinonym only shows a descent from one of them. The other 7 is woefully ignored, so that one's pedigree is not complete enough to point out clearly and with authenticity a feature which, though the most important, is perhaps the oftenest disregarded. Every line of descent back to the days when each surname had a meaning, the genealogy is only a partial value in any argument at this time. Nevertheless, the names exist. And with those of topography and of usage already quoted, and with many a record is written in oral history, they emphatically tell us of a large section of our ancestry whose complexion was black. Excuse me. Like Ritchie said, the Saracens were black. But whether the Europeans of the period were wholly or only partially invaders, and whether they were characteristic. When Roland sees the cursed heathen folk as black as ink, all black except their teeth, he's telling you that these were black people. Yes, yes, yes. even the people of Scotland were called nigger or Niger, nigger, whatever, you know. And that's why we read in the sense that the early British ancestors and those Scotland was overrun in one district by Moors of the 15th century. But 5 centuries earlier, the kings of Alban were Moors. Remember that. The kings would have been Moors. And one of the most celebrated of these, Kenneth or nigger or Doob Kenneth or nigger Kenneth, ruled over certain districts known as the 3 black divisions. How long before and after that the ascendancy remained with this swarthy nation, and what were the probable fluctuations of color throughout the island? It is impossible to ascertain and premature to discuss. But at any rate, the Moorish races, nec faso nomine pictos, were among the chief opponents of the Romans, and they marched through Britain 1,800 years ago. Yes, yes, yes. These fiercest divisions of these, and apparently the most recent in time, was that of the Danes or Cimbri, remembered by the Christianized races of Britain as the Black Heathens, the Nigra Gentes, the Duke Gauls. But although some invaders of these may be claimed as, in some respect, the progenitors of the mingled people, whom we now call gypsies, yet like the continental kindred, the gypsies of Britain had far earlier British ancestors than these. Scotland was overrun in one district by Moors in the 15th century. But 5 centuries earlier, the kings of Alban were Moors. And one of the most celebrated of these, Kenneth or nigger or Duke, ruled over certain districts known as the 3 black divisions. How long before and after that the ascendancy remained with his swarthy nation? And what were the probable fluctuations of color throughout the island? It is impossible to ascertain and premature to discuss. But at any rate, the Moorish race, nec falso nomino pictos, were, in a sense, enemies of the Romans, were black people. This, in a sense, shows you the importance of this area. It shows you how ancient, Britain was, in a sense, a place where black people ruled. The British pretend that they don't know about the blacks of the UK. David McRitchie wrote Mr. Samuel Lading in his interesting revelations of the Catholics. Imagines the earliest inhabitants of North Britain were cumbo-cephalic, broad-headed, approaching to a Negroid or Australian rather than a Mongol or Arctic type. Again, he writes, this tribe, chronologically testimony of the Aboriginal Britons, must have more closely resemble the Australians or Tasmanians than the Laplanders or Esquimaux. McRitchie makes it clear that by the late 19th century, scholars recognized the group as not the homeland of the Europeans. McRitchie said, we have just seen that many scientific men hold that there are some grounds for believing that portions, at least of Europe, have formerly been inhabited by blacks, tawny and copper-colored races. And we are also learning that the white race has not always been confined to the Eastern Hemisphere. Look at this coin where we can clearly see, in a sense, the Negroid features of this king who's depicted on this coin. Although Joel Augustus Rogers was largely self-trained, he's the most distinguished person, and in his book, Sex and Race, he tells us so much about the various black races, in a sense, the various black people that ruled Europe. I would recommend for anybody that's really interested in the race mixing in ancient Europe, get the book Sex and Race by J. Rogers. You can still find it. J. Rogers published in newspapers and books many of his amazing facts, substantiated by subsequent writings on this topic. For example, read more about the Scotta of Egypt and the origin of the Scottish people at the Pharaoh's daughter, who was the mother of all Scots, from the Scotsman publication. This is a book called The Negro Rulers of Scotland. You might want to check it out. The first settlers of Ireland, as discussed earlier, were black. Waddle tells us the anthropologists that these people were black. We know about Phoenicia. We know about the caves. We know about these things. And we know that these black people ruled the Silures and the Druids. Yes. These Druids had their religion and they held their ceremonies around the various monoliths that we find in Europe today. The Celtic kings were very important because they helped, in a sense, provide us with an understanding of this period in time. From Levantine cities, the Phoenicians began to emerge in the 16th century BCE and spread their civilization, first in Britain and then into Ireland. The Phoenician settlers in Britain mined tin. The tin was an important metal of the ancients because it was needed in the making of bronze. Today, many people from the Caribbean and West Africa are moving into Britain. Some people see these migrants to the British Isles as newcomers. Although this is the case, the ancestors of many of these foundational Black British or Britons were probably Phoenicians who early colonized West Africa. The Phoenicians were one of the earliest foundational Black Britons population to settle Britain. There's considerable evidence that the Phoenicians knew about the tin deposits in the British Isles. Researchers believe that the Phoenicians mined the tin in the Cornish tin mines. The British tin allowed the Phoenicians to make tons of money selling their tin. Necho's mission to circumnavigate Africa and Handel's voyage to West Africa makes it clear that the Phoenicians were in West Africa. The presence of the Larabus tribe in Numidia would explain, in a sense, the migration of the Yoruba merchants from Carthage to Nigeria. Yoruba, you see that connection? It would also suggest that the Yorubas equal Yoruba, Fulani equal Fulani, and Aussies equal Hausa. Probably also settled in Britain to maintain the tin mines in Britain. They would represent some of the earliest FBB. In other words, in a sense, when we look at these words, Yoruba, Fulani, Aussies, Hausa, you can see, in a sense, that these tribes, these modern tribes that live in West Africa today, were involved, or they were very important tribes, even in ancient times. See? This is why you have to, in a sense, really not just go to Europeans to get our history, because they're not going to try to see these connections. They're not going to, in a sense, try to help you to really understand what was going on. The history of Blacks in Britain has been recorded by Gerald Massey, Godfrey Higgins, and David McRitchie. Massey, in the Book of Beginnings, talked about the Egyptian origin of the foundational Black Britons. Massey explained that Stonehenge was built by the foundational Black Celtic priests called Druids. Godfrey Higgins discussed the African religious origin of the foundational Black Britons. Massey said a great nation called Celtai, of whom the Druids were the priests, spread themselves almost the entire earth and are tracing their gigantic monuments from India to the extremity of Britain. Roman historian Tacitus in 880 AD said, and I quote, "The dark complexion and the unusually curly hair of the Silures or Black Celts." Wow. The first documented Black rulers of Europe is the Bangle Lady of Britain. Her grave indicates her high status. The descendants of the Black Britons usually have the surname Douglas, Black Swarthy, Macduff, Dons, Browns, Black Morians, Moore, Niger, Rory or Roderick. Other evidence of the Negro origins of the Black Britons was the thick lips of many Britons, according to McRitchie's and the Negro Moorish coat of arms for many elite British families. Bear's Encyclopedia Heraldica noted that, and I quote, "The Moor's head is the heraldic term for the head of a Black or Negro man. Due to mixing with the invading white Europeans, the Black Europeans, like the Gypsies, Scots, and Irish, lost their dark complexions." You're going to want to find out more. Get the book, The Negro Rulers of Scotland and the British Isles. Ancient Modern Britain by David McRitchie. Yes, they discussed this, But, more information on the ancient Blacks can come from my books. And these books include The Nationality and Law of the Foundation of Black Americans, Black History Gem Essays, and History of Blacks in America from Prehistory 1877. You can order these books on Amazon.com. Get these books. Make these books a part of your library so you too will be on the know about our history. Other books that can help you to understand is my books, The Blacks in Europe, from prehistory to contemporary times. This book, in a sense, is written by me, will explain you the Blacks in Europe, the world history of the Black race, and also you might want to get manufactured genetic origins of the fake Eurasian back migration, because they try to say, in a sense, that white people have always been in Europe. My book, the manufactured genetic origins of the fake Eurasian back migration, this book shows you that that's all not true. It's not true at all. It's all a lie. Get these books so you can have an accurate and true understanding of the history of Black people in Europe. Oliver Cromwell can be credited with the exile and extermination of many Blacks in Ireland, Wales, and Scotland. Cromwell in his war to reconquer the Irish sent Black Irish to the Caribbean and 13 colonies in America, I quote, to perpetuality as slaves on the sugar plantation. Very few Black Irish were indentured servants. After the Battle of Worcester, 10,000 Welsh were sent into slavery. It's very important to understand that don't get it twisted. The later Irish that migrated to the Caribbean and to America, these were white Irish. These white Irish, in a sense, took over the houses and dwellings of the Black Irish who were forced out of Ireland, who were in a sense sold into slavery in other places. There were two different Irish groups. The original Irish were Black, the latter Irish were white, and these were the descendants of people who conquered the Black Irish. Cromwell saw slavery as a perfect way to remove the Catholic Blacks from Ireland and Scotland. If you look look at this is a picture of Cromwell. You can see that this man was a Negro too. He just had straight hair. Cromwell usually worked with Bristol merchants to sell many Irish into slavery. Between 1651 and 1654, 34,000 to 40,000 Irish Roman Catholics were sold as slaves. Cromwell forced many Black Irish to serve in his army. Instead of freeing these Blacks, Black Irish men were forced to serve as mercenaries. They were sold by Cromwell to be placed in armies across Europe, especially France and Spain. Yes. And see, because of the fact that they were Black like the Africans, I mean, damn, people just said, hey, after a while, they just stopped really dealing with people based on their nation, and they just wanted to classify people on the color of their skin. And this is how many Black Europeans became associated or just recognized as Blacks from Africa. Many of the Irish slaves were women and children sent to the Barbados 13 colonies. Here's an example of a runaway slave. Runaway from a subscriber living in Lancaster, a native Irish servant woman named Katie Hort Norton, who came from the county of Wicklow in Ireland last fall. She was about 25 or 26 of age and of a dark complexion, as you can see. Then we see also from the Virginia Gazette, 1739, it ran an article that talked about it since John Mackay and Francis May were swarthy complexioned people who, in a sense, had ran away. So we again see that it was common for many Irish servants and slaves to be Black back in the day. Magritte was the first researcher to note that your surname often goes back to a Black ancestor. He wrote that, and I quote, "But if the Negro ancestor of such a 9/10 white man had lived amidst a white population whose ideas were regarded to nomenclature as primitive as those of our ancestors 1,000 years ago, his offspring would have eventually become known by some name as Black or Negro, used as a surname. Precisely the same thing has actually happened here. We know as a historical fact that a Niger Del Dube has lived, a Nigger Del Dube has lived and reigned over certain Black divisions of our island, and probably over white divisions also. That a race known as the Sons of Black succeeded him in history." You see? Very important to understand. Here we can see some of the surnames, like Crawford, Winters, surnames in a sense that did not come from our former masters. These surnames, like Crawford, Codwell, Winters, these came in a sense from the various Black people who in a sense were enslaved. Magritte in Ancient and Modern Britons, talks about the Winters of Northumberland. So, He described the country people who remember him as a tall, powerful man of dark complexion. I guess this one was like me. This, as you can see, this would be, this is the crest of the winners, you know. It is clear that many of our surnames are Black, Irish, and Scotsman origin. We did not get all of our surnames from our masters. Very important to remember. We are prisoners of war, as noted by, by Fuller. Nellie Fuller has told us that we're prisoners of war. The purpose for studying Black history is not to find out how great we were. It is to find out what mistakes were made that put us in our current situation. Yes. The FBA never forgot their tribal origins and identities. Some were Cherokee, some were Freeman Muskegon. But European settlers have been trying for years to separate FBA from the land. Black Native Americans who were sold into slavery lost their nationality when settler administrators changed their birth certificates and other records from Native to Negro. Very important to understand. So again, in the sense is that there's always been this fight. There's always been this desire to label foundational Black Americans, to take away our history, to destroy history and make us unknown, you see. And for Virginia's act to preserve racial integrity, the biggest enemy of Black people was Walter Ashley Plecker. And Walter Plecker, he effectively, in a sense, was able to turn all the Indians in Virginia into, in a sense, into Negroes by just giving them different names. It's very important to understand is that our history is a history that has been stolen. Our history has been complicated because of the fact, in a sense, that people refuse to recognize the fact that there's a hate of you. Yes. We do not want to admit that people hate us. No, we do not want to admit that people hate us, but people do. People who hate us, they hate us not in a sense because of the fact that we're some different group. They hate us because of the fact, in a sense, that we're Black. They hate us because of the fact that they can't do what we do. They're not like us. And because they're not like us, it makes them, in a sense, very jealous, very envious, you see. But see, we can't, in a sense, allow this envy of people to destroy the fact, in a sense, that we are an important people. So let's try to support each other. Let's try to support our people and support our findings, because we are, in a sense, here. And we need to, in a sense, be supportive of, in a sense, our reality. Buy my latest book, History and Cultures of Black Aboriginals in America. This is the first book that explains and discusses the entire history of how the original people who lived in the America were Black Aboriginals. These Black Aboriginals lived in many different tribes. They built stone pyramids. They built great cities. They built underwater bridges that linked both sides of the Mississippi River. Buy this book, History and Culture of the Black Aboriginals. Find out how many of us, most of us, just about all of us, who are Blacks, native to America, have Aboriginal ancestors. Get this book. Learn about our history. Learn about your culture.
Free your mind, let it go. To the top, drop it to the floor. Take energy, come at like whoa. Spring water, let it go. Free your mind, let it go. Tap in, go, let it nigga know. Hey, let it nigga know. Let it nigga know. Energy, come at like whoa. Spring water, let it grow. Free your mind, let it go. To the top, drop it to the floor. Energy, come at like whoa. Tap in, go, let it nigga know. Hey, she told me go and put it in her heart. I told her I don't wanna break it all apart. Let me be a night light in the dark. Hey, my nigga shine bright with the art. Gemini 2 time, know it's hard. Got the stars on the line with the charts. Big dog, so I gotta leave a mark. Free your mind, cause I'm not that smart. Hey, energy, got my light walk. Spring water, how did that grow? Free your mind, let it go. To the top, drop it to the floor. Hey, energy, got my light walk. Spring water, how did that grow? Free your mind, let it go. Tap in, go, let it nigga know. Hey.
supplemental learning for your mini. But you can learn too. Don't send your mini into the belly of the beast unarmed. Courses, practical math, language, the code, our story, and more. An institution founded by us, dedicated to us and our fight for justice. Here you will learn ways to combat the system using the same information they are trying to keep away from you. Welcome to FBA Sunday School.
Let the researcher do the research. Yes, let the researcher do the research. Dr. Clyde Winters, let him do the research. We need more researchers like Dr. Clyde Winters. Yes, yes, yes. Let the researcher do the research. Yes, we don't understand that it takes people who want to do research to be able, in a sense, to tell us our history. Yes, many people have taken my course, The Afrocentric Researcher. You can take it too. All you got to do is join. But if you don't, in a sense, join, understand that it's through your hard work, through your persistence that you can become a researcher. Yes, yes, yes. Let the researcher do the researcher. You know what? I've written some books that can help you to be a researcher. Those books are Pathfinder, Clyde Winters in Search of the Roots of Afrocentric Studies. Yes, yes, this book is an important book. It'll help you learn all about your history. My other book is Afrocentric Researcher by Dr. Clyde Winters. This book, in a sense, is the most important book that you will find. What makes this book important is that the Afrocentric Researcher provides you with a course, yes, provides you with a course outline that tells you all the things you do to be a great researcher. Yes, get these books, the Afrocentric Researcher, and in a sense, get my book, Pathfinder. These books are the books you need to be successful, the books that will make you a great researcher. Get these books, but let the researcher do the research, but you can be the researcher too. Our identity and our culture as Black foundational Americans. Yes, yes. Wars between Black Indians and whites were manufactured to produce Black slaves for whites. The English, the French, and the Dutch provided the Native Americans with guns, rum, and cheap goods to purchase Native American Indian slaves. Between 1670 and 1720, many Black Native Americans were enslaved. The Black Native Americans were sold into slavery throughout the 13 colonies, Mississippi Valley, Canada, and the British West Indies. The majority of Black Native Americans sold into slavery by whites and Indians. Slave traders were the Choctaw, the Yamasee, and other Carolina tribes. Yes, yes. Many of these tribes like the Mandi, Mandinga, many of these tribes, we lost their names. And their names have been lost to history because of the fact, in a sense, that when the European came, as he conquered these Black Indians, he just made them slaves. And so over time, in a sense, their nations disappeared. Over time, in a sense, their history wasn't recorded. Over time, they were even able to deny that Aboriginal Blacks even existed in America. They wanted to give our Aboriginal ancestors gifts. And the only problem with the gifts that they gave us was that often these blankets that they gave us carried smallpox, yes, diseases. They also, in a sense, gave us another gift, rum, fire water. And this rum caused an addiction among us. In a sense, it led to a demand for guns because it incentivized Indian slave trading. Yes, the first slaves sold in America were Indians, Black Indians, selling other Black Indians to Europeans to work on their cotton, not on their cotton plantations, their tobacco plantations, their rice plantations. Yes, yes, yes. We sold each other over here, just like in Africa, because of the fact is that we failed to understand that we are one, we are one, we are one. We should be united based upon our identity and our culture as Black foundational Americans. Yes, yes. Reparations, baby, reparations. We deserve reparations. We deserve reparations like yesterday, not just today. No, not just today. We deserve our reparations. Give us our money, baby. Cut the check.
Cut the check, Black first because it's brilliant. People talk too much. Say less, remain on goal, follow the spirit. When the going gets
The only thing that can save you is be one, be one, be one. To fight Cage, you must stay black first.